Hey guys, Space Marine 658 here. Today we're going to be going over how to get your enums into Unreal Engine, specifically into UI. Now, of course, we talked about last time about how to have a display name and things like that for when you're inside the editor. But something you may be aware of is if you actually create a shipping version of your game, things like UMeta are actually stripped out of the engine as a way to make the game more performant. So something you're going to need to do is actually create functions to go ahead and pull that data whenever you're wanting to run things in UI. Now, depending on your actual enum, a lot of times you can just get away with converting it directly into a string. So for example, here I've got my enum crew morale, which that is the more standard way of naming convention. A lot of Unreal Engine enums start with the E. But if we're going ahead and looking at it, right, we have all of these different enum states that are very easy to transition. But there may be times when you have examples that aren't as easy. So, for example, when you have anything with a sort of space between different words. Now, there are different ways to handle this. You could pull these in and remove the underscore and things like that. But something I like to do just to make it a little bit easier for myself is create usually one general or a couple of functions, depending on how many enums I'm going to have. So, an example, if I'm only going to have like maybe 2 or 3 enums that I'm wanting to pull this information out of, what I'll go ahead and do is in this example, right, I've created an enum display name class, and I've gone ahead and what I do is I pass in the string for what enum I'm wanting to get the um, information from. And then I'm also passing in a value pointer. So what does this actually do? What does this mean? So this U function is basically, as you know, we talked about last time, it's just a simple blueprint callable. It returns a f string. It's a static function, of course, because we're using this in a blueprint library, or in this case, a C++ function library. And we have the name enum display name. Now, depending on how many of these you have, you may make one of these for each and every single enum if you've got a lot and you don't want them to be, you don't want to worry about dependency issues. But if you've got only a handful, you can combine them down. And then we're passing in an f string, the in enum, and a uint8 value pointer. So what does this actually do? Basically, what this does is this comes in, and I've got an if and else if statement. So right now it goes in and goes, is enum in enum equal to crew morale? If not, is this equal to missile guidance? Now, of course, if we wanted to add an additional one, say example, we wanted to do the captain's personality, we could basically just do the same thing. Add another else if, and then of course we need to wrap that in enum equal. And then to make it easier on ourselves, we'll just copy paste that captain personality. And then we'll throw on our brackets. And what we're going to do now is once you're actually in here, then you actually need to switch on the value pointer. Now, if you try to do this, of course, before you get to this point, what you'll end up actually doing is just end up a lot of times these overlap. So if you're trying to just say, oh, which one of these has the value pointer of the match, unless you're for certain these don't overlap, but it's basically a 0% chance because the way enums work is the first one will be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, because basically stating the state. Now, I believe you have a bit mask. It's a little different. Basically, you'll have the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but then you'll also have a true or false bit mask flag for each one of these. I don't work with bit masks much, so I couldn't tell you that for 100% certain because I don't really use them. But for this, it's actually quite straightforward and quite simple. We basically have a switch case, and then we're going to go ahead and basically switch on the different options we have for the captain's personality. So we can do is remove this, and let's actually just cut off all of this here. So our first case for captain's personality is going to be ambitious. And then it's as simple as when the case is ambitious, we'll return text. And we're going to return just ambitious. like I said, for something like this where it's pretty, cut and dry, it's not going to be as important or as useful compared to something um, like the conditions here. For example, they got condition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where this I think is especially useful is less in terms of for the actual display name, which has its uses but isn't necessarily the most useful. Where it's going to be the most useful, in my opinion, is going to be these tooltips. Now, these ones I've specifically split out mostly because these ones will probably change here or there. So just to make sure they're not dependent on each other, I've gone ahead and the nice thing is I've hard coded in specifically the enum type that it takes. And so what'll happen is when we actually get an engine in the editor is we'll be able to select this, and that makes it a lot easier too to use. So for example, when we're using a switch case here with these if enums, you really got to know the in enum name. So it relies on you having that documentation or having access to them directly to know. But if you're sharing this project with, like, say, some artists, that might make it a little bit harder to use. Versus when we go take a look at this enum tooltip, because it's actually based on the enum itself, it's a lot easier. It's a lot more flexible. It's a lot less likely to break. So as an example, right, let's say you remove the steady option. Well, yes, this case itself would break. That should tell you before you actually get to the editor, because you'll actually get an error here. Versus if you go down here and you remove directed target, or actually you'll say you remove the entire enum and missile guidance, this code still technically works. You just won't ever get anything in the case of this option. So all this code is wasted. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at what these functions actually look like inside of the editor. Let me go ahead and just open up one of my ship screens here where I'm using it. So I've got this crew morale section here. Now this is just labeled as test, but what actually happens is within the construct of this, I actually pull from the attribute component my crew morale enum, and then I have a toText where I'm just getting the base name because, of course, in this case, I didn't necessarily specifically need the text there. If I wanted to instead pull the actual display name, what I could do is go display name, and then I should have up here enum display name. Now I'd have to pass in the enum itself. So if I wanted crew morale, and then I'd also need to know which one of these it is. So I believe the easiest way would actually be I can pass this, and this will actually pass the actual correct byte based on the one that is set here. So it's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's, if you're working with an artist or something, that might make things a little bit more complicated for them. Versus, here it's literally just crew morale enum tooltip, and you can do a very similar thing for the display name. And then if you remove this, so we're just using this, then you could even have it be here selectable. So if they're wanting to do something where they're displaying all the options, say for a tutorial or something, this is a lot easier to use than the other one where you have to enter in all the possible options, because they may not know how many options are actually available for that thing here. So they may have to actually go and test it out or go look through the code to try and figure that out. But yeah, so that is pretty much it for today. I do have a video that I've still been working on in the background about compiling shaders, but that still needs some more time to cook. So I want to go ahead and release this real quick. So I had something out on the channel. I also have some video planned for what we call DX, or developer experience, when it comes to Unreal Engine. Just some ways you can make your artists' lives a little easier. But that's it for today. If you have any questions or anything else you'd like to know, leave them down in the comments below. But otherwise, good luck and good hunting.